Hi, Journeyers. I'm Tony Carnes. I'm your host for A Journey Through NYC Religions Television. Hanukkah is coming up. It's a great holiday. This is going to be a great time. And we thought we'd join with this great time with having Howard Teich on our program. I'll tell you a little bit about him in a moment. Howard, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Tony. It's a pleasure to be on here with you. And let me start off by congratulating you on what you've accomplished for all of us. So ecumenical in terms of visiting sites, meeting with people throughout the city of different religious backgrounds. It's part of what we all believe in and how we actually met through New York Board of Rabbis dialogue of Christians, evangelics, and Jews.
Now, Howard, I know you from there, but I also know you from many activities and way you've created and shepherded many activities, the Brooklyn Jewish Initiative, the Bronx Jewish Initiative, the Manhattan Jewish Initiative. These are collecting the tales of the city, Jewish tales, and you have put a lot of effort on bringing back to public knowledge all of the rich Jewish heritage we have in New York. How did that get started?
Just my belief, actually. Legacy is really important, and when you look at the histories, both of whether it be Christian, other religions, Jewish religion goes back 5,000 years. I like to talk about the fact that the New York Jewish civilization is one of the greatest in the 5,000-year history of our people. It is, and one of the things that people
That's a really good way to put it.
One of the things that people don't realize, and I've been reading a book from 1920s and doing a lot of homework on that. People don't realize that before the state of Israel, where there was persecution really throughout the world of the Jewish community for thousands of years, a couple of thousand, New York was looked to by them as really one of the only safe spaces in the world for freedom, for opportunity of practicing their religion and having opportunity. And that's why many of them came to New York. And so the civilizations we've grown, you know, it's a golden age for us in terms of how we've lived here. And it needed to be recorded. People needed to know about it, and they have to recognize it. That's why we have the websites. We're doing a lot on social media, doing a lot of various things which we'll talk about in this, whether it be the book or the music video, school contests we're coming up with, and other things.
Well, of course, I do have to mention right away that I recently saw you on being a backup dancer to Nissan Black, the Hasidic rapper. Great job.
Yeah, well, I hadn't gone to the gym that day, and they got me out there and worked me over big time. But it was fun.
Well, it is fun, and we'll be sure to link it on our website so people can see. Don't miss it. Also,
Nissan Black. Let me just say for people who don't know, Nissan Black is an extraordinary, well recognized, millions of followers actually in the world, a Black Hasidic Jewish rapper. And we brought him in, Cecilia did actually, in the song she wrote, to bring him in. And as you'll see when people watch that, he goes around to all communities in the borough of Brooklyn, high-fiving them, dancing with them, doing things with them, because that's part of who we are. You know, we're people who, all of us in all backgrounds, who are together. And we wanted to reflect that in that music video, We're Brooklyn.
Well, he's quite joyous, and so are you.
And so are you.
I want to mention that you've got a new book out with Cecilia called We're Brooklyn. And can you tell us a little bit? You mentioned to me that you mentioned Hanukkah tales in that occasionally.
Well, it's coming out at a time of Hanukkah. Actually, the music video did also, which is wonderful. Hanukkah is a very important holiday to me. And it really represents something very special. The origination of it was Judah Maccabee in terms of retaking the temple in Israel.
Now, let me ask about that for a moment. Judah Maccabees, when was this and who is that?
It was about 100 BCE, before the Common Era, as we call it, BC otherwise.
Right.
And the Jews were in Israel for many thousands of years, but most of the years we had a kingdom there, and for hundreds of years, around 1,000 to 500, we had a major temple that was lost to us. And then the Greeks took over, and Judah Maccabee stood up to them when we had the second temple, and they wanted to put idols into the temple. He said, "That's not what we do." And he was a great leader, and he stood up to them. They took back the temple. We have an eternal light that we have in the synagogues. He wanted to light it. There was 1 day's oil, and it lasted 8 days. And
Now that's the miracle of Hanukkah, right?
Yeah. That's the original miracle. I go well beyond it in my thinking, and wrote an article on this a number of years ago. And I still believe it, that we're in a world given to us by God that's full of miracles all the time, if we just recognize it. And Hanukkah is a time to really recognize it in the lighting of bringing light to the world, of recognizing the miracle of who we are, what we are, and what's been created.
Now at Hanukkah, what do you do at Hanukkah? Do you light a candle or have a meal, or what goes on?
Well, a lot of different things, and it depends on the background of the individual. You know, it's the Jewish community is very different in terms of how they observe.
Right.
From the ultra Orthodox, we call it, who there are 613 commandments, they follow it, to those who think eating the bagel once a year makes them Jewish, if they put the cream cheese on right. So it's a variety. Hanukkah is a time, though, that families get together a lot. Community gets together. The candle lighting is important. You'll see that now in the public square as well. And it really is about bringing light into the world. A couple of things I'll just share of nice memories. So, and somebody reminded me the other day, when I was a kid, it was a time the family came together. We had the same menorah every year. We all lit different candles at different times, and it was family tradition, and that's part of what goes on during Hanukkah. The other one was a wonderful thing I won't forget. My grandmother, who was Orthodox and sort of small, and I used to go up to her house. It was sort of around the corner, and she would stand on the third step, because she had her apartment upstairs, put her hands on my head and give a blessing in a dollar bill, which was for 100 years of life. It was called Hanukkah geld, which is, Hanukkah money. The other thing, the last thing I'll mention, there's something called dreidel. And it's a game, and it has to do with life and good spirit in many ways. And in the old days, it was a gambling game. Now it's for kids and other things. And it's something wonderful. But I'll add one more thing. Again, Jews went through persecution a lot. And when they left Spain, they didn't do it because they felt like it in 1492. They had to get out. I was down in Ecuador, and I was in the church, and they had a place that you could buy trinkets. And lo and behold, I look, and there's a little wooden thing. It has a cross on one side, had various other things. And it was, you could tell, it was a dreidel, but to hide their identity, they had other symbols on it. And it was very precious to me to see that, of people who left, who tried to show themselves as Christian, because they would have been persecuted as Jews. So there's such a strong bond between the years of Judaism and Christianity. It's incredible.
Now, I just want to go back to the Hanukkah candle. Now, is that in the menorah, or is that a single candle by itself?
Well, there are 8 candles for 8 nights, and there
Yes.
are ways that came about. And there's one called the shamus, which is the one that you light everything with, and that was for the king. That's the ultimate of creating light in the world. And so that creates all of you use that, and you light it, and then you light the other candles.
So when your grandmother gave you the Hanukkah geld, and she stood on the chairs and she put her hands upon you and a blessing. That's such a great picture of optimism, going upward, connection, tradition, the present connecting up to tradition. All of those things are mixed together in that. It's a wonderful picture of what it means to be a Jew, in a tradition that says we have optimism and we have reach out to other people. You've done that really well. What do you hope that this book will do? We're Brooklyn. What do you hope that will accomplish?
It's very important that young people have the sense of who they are. And this is not only for Jewish kids, it's for everybody, and it's a secular Jewish book in a way, because it's a family. It's a wonderful little story, actually, as it turns out. We created it, but it's a wonderful little story of a school teacher who gives them an assignment to the kids, which is a mixed group, obviously, that they should go back and learn about their family's heritage in Brooklyn and then report into class. These two, Rebecca and Seth, as we gave them names, went back and mentioned it to their grandmother. And they were going to go over there the next day, who said, "Oh, let me take you around. I'll show you what our heritage is." And that's what the book is. She takes them around Brooklyn to many of the sites. She tells them about the family. She tells about going back a generation in Brownsville they were, and other things that take place. So it's something that's meant as an expression of these children, and then they report out in class talking about their Jewish heritage. But it could be for any background, the same kind of thing. You could have a Christian version of this, and there could be a Muslim version, and any one of them. The importance is that young people need to understand their history. They have to have a feeling for their people. They have to have a pride in who they are. And they need each learn about each other and respect them. That's what we hope to accomplish in this book.
Is the young girl, she's from Flatbush?
Well,
or where?
Interesting question. The grandmother's in Flatbush. I'm not sure. You got me on the first question.
Well, what places do they visit? Where does she go?
Well, they go to a lot of places, and one of them that's important to me, because it turns out my grandparents were from there, is Brownsville. It was a very important place for the Jewish community in the 20s, 30s, up until the 50s, 60s, actually, in Brooklyn, and many things came out of there that were important, and it was one of the centers of social activism. Of course, the Jewish community was always involved in that. And we actually, BJHI, and I'll mention the Brooklyn Jewish Historical Initiative, which is participating in all of this in terms of giving identity to the history of the Jewish community. We have an annual event that we hold. There's a veterans memorial in Brownsville that was built in the 20s. Big deal. It's in Zion Park. And literally forgotten for many years and was in disrepair. They've just fixed it. We hold an annual ceremony there. And one of the wonderful parts of it was we've involved the children. There's a school right behind it. The school was in the old days a Yiddish theater. And the kids, who were African-American mostly and other dynamic backgrounds, and we asked them, so many, it was like 8 or 10 different backgrounds that were represented there. And they wrote things about the Jewish community, and came out, and another school was there, and they sang, America, and we had a true celebration. The kids never even knew what this monument was. They didn't understand it. And one of the things that we're trying to foster is the idea of two communities or multiple communities, one street, two different times, but one path of our background that we got to recognize. We have different people who come onto the same street at different times, It's all of our community over a period of time. So we're really trying to force that. So in the book, they're in Coney Island at one time, they're at Flatbush at some point, they're, you know, in all the different ones, and they go into the Hasidic, they look at the Children's Museum, Jewish Children's Museum, they look at 770, which is the Lubavitch and Chabad, they go to Satmar, and you know, so it's a tour, Borough Park, and giving a few words in Yiddish that they see and a couple of other things. So it's a light touch of a view of what is there.
And the places you've mentioned are all special Jewish places. You go Coney Island today, of course, it's got a lot of Russian Jews, which is a new chapter in the history of Jews in New York City, the recent Russian immigration. And you also have Midwood, and out toward there you have you know, the Sephardic synagogues and communities, which means that they came from North Africa, and they
Many
have
of,
a,
many
I'm
of the
sorry?
many of the Spanish-speaking communities, you know.
That's right. That's right.
That's the
And
fact. I'm
we
sorry.
did a story on them having installing a Torah in a Spanish-speaking synagogue, which was interesting. And I
But that's
believe,
the fascination of Brooklyn. You know, the fascination of Brooklyn is you have this gathering of people, and it's not only our community; it's all of them. That goes from, and I did mention like Park Slope and other places like that, which is a different breed of, you know, a different group of the Jewish community. So
now, where Brooklyn is trying to bring people together, but we are so fractionated nowadays. How do we overcome our division? Would this book help, and how do you think it'll help?
well, the easiest way to overcome division is to overcome division. Um, you know, to realize, I think it's overplayed, candidly, the division. I think media does a lot of that, and some of the some other groups who have an interest in division lead division.
Yeah.
I have a strong feeling about the togetherness of people and the optimism of people. That's one of the things we need to do more and more as leaders in the community, is talk about the fact of the positive nature of who we are. You know, we can't fall into it. That's where Hanukkah comes in. You know, it's about the light. That's where Christmas comes in. You know, these are all good things. That's where the kinds of things we've done, the spiritual things, you know, the things for community, the history of both in as an example in the Christian and Jewish community of helping others. That's been a big part of who we are. We need to talk about that more. You know, this division stuff that they're talking about, the incidents that come up. If you have an incident and it's one that affects a few people out of millions, yeah, that's going to happen. People going to say things about each other. Yeah, that's going to happen. But the fact is, we have to do more. That's our role for the next 1,000 years, for the next millennium. As Isaiah would say, to, you know, to bring everybody together and to have peace in the world.
Do you think that this is part of your Jewish identity, and is that going to grow stronger or weaker over time? Do the new generation know what it means to be a Jew?
Well, it's interesting that there are new approaches coming out of the younger generation. There are two things that need to take place, and again, we're talking about and there's a big difference between what's going on in Israel, what's going on in America. There's an extraordinary civilization that's grown in Israel. It's mostly a young country. I think the median age is in its late 20s or something like that. Here, it's much older. And there's a responsibility that we have to young people to give them something to believe in. You know, and that's part of why to do these things. You know, we have a lot of our history that we know about that we need to share. We have X number of years to do that still. But I have great hope for the future of young people, but not if we play up the divisions. You know, we can't do that. We have to take account of the fact of things like, and one of the narratives of the day is anti-Semitism. I think it's overplayed in terms of how much there is and why, and that can't be the message to the young people, that we need to just face that forever, because it's not the truth. You know, again, the freedom and opportunity that we've gotten in this New York City and in America is really what the message narrative need be if we're going to
Well,
have youth come along.
well, let me ask you a little bit on yourself. You grew up in a Jewish family.
Yeah.
Was it a religious family? I mean, your grandmother was Orthodox. Were your parents Orthodox?
We had a strong commitment to the Jewish community. I mean, you know, on both sides. We grew up conservative, but there was a big tradition. We were the early families out on Long Island of the Jewish community. So my father's family was involved in the beginnings of Huntington Jewish Center, and my mother's family was involved in the beginnings of the Babylon Jewish community. So, you know, and down on the South Shore. So from that point of view, we had a deep commitment, you know, as far as religious, a deep love of of our history and of Israel as it developed. I was born actually before Israel by a couple of years. But so from that point of view, yeah, I smiled because there was I did an interview with one of the great, um, not an interview, actually a meeting had been set up with this wonderful rabbi, very important rabbi. And he meets with me, and at the end of it, and here I was, I think, president of American Jewish Congress and other things that I've been involved in. And he puts his arm as I'm walking around. He said, "You know, you could be a good Jew someday."
The you know, what you could have told him is said, well, you know what? I'll take you on a tour of the Jews of New York, and you'll discover what Jews are.
Well, you know, you're saying something very, very important, which is um, the distinguishing characteristic from a Jew who's learned. I saw a film last night, wonderful film. I recommend it to everybody, but it's only out for a few days, called Soul Doctor. It's about Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach. And one of the things that comes up is you can have somebody who's very learned and um, is very involved in the Torah and everything all the time, and has no sense of the outward world. You know, doesn't deal with all the other communities, and somebody who really shares, which is part of what the God service is, which is making a difference in the world. That's part of our responsibility of carrying out what we're blessed with, actually, which is the opportunity. So how you define someone being a good Jew is in the eye of the beholder, I suppose.
Now, if you talk to young people, let's say a young family, will they say, "Oh, this is exactly the type of book we need"?
Uh, that would be nice.
Yes. By the way, we'll have a link to where you can get this book on our website, so I don't want people to forget about it. It's what I
I
would call the book is delightful.
I think it's an opening. I mean, you know, I've done a lot of reading over the years, and one of the things that's incredible is as you do more reading, and we're so fortunate now with technology, because if you go on YouTube, the opportunity of hearing some of the great leaders and thinking is unbelievable. So what I would love is, yeah, people look at this and say, boy, now I want to learn more. I want to learn more about those communities. Not that they spend more time online, but that it does get them to have a certain additional sense of pride.
Who do you, if you were, who do you look to read about, to deepen your thinking about the world and Jewishness and so forth?
Well, a number of people. I mean, I'm very involved in the civic community. I've been very involved in the Democratic Party over the years,
Hmm.
but in a broad range of things, as well as being on the board, not only in the Jewish community, but I've been on very involved in the Native American community for years, and I was on the board of the National Museum of American Indian. I'm on the board of National Action Network. Al Sharpton asked me to be on the board. So one of the things that's very important in the Jewish community, I've been very involved recently and very taken by Rabbi Joshua Abram Heschel, um, uh, Abraham Joshua Heschel.
Yes, I know. Yes, of
Yeah,
course.
and he's just unbelievable, as well as Shlomo Karlbach and a variety of others. These are just great thinkers, and if you trace back those people who they looked at, it's beyond imagination. And the other thing that we need to take a look at, and I feel very fortunate that we're in America, is the foundational thinking of our country and the people who wrote and the thinking of our founders. It was no small deal what they took on and what they created here. It's brilliance when you really get right down to it.
Well, yeah, and of course, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence was a Jewish guy named Morris, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
true. But a lot of the thinking, I mean, even Jefferson, obviously did a look at the Bible, taking out some of various references in terms of his view of Christianity, which when we go back and we look at the Sermon on the Mount and see the beginnings of America, you learn a lot about the connectivity and the spiritual sense of who we are as a country.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, Howard, because we've run out of time. I know you're a cornucopia of knowledge and wisdom, and you've got a great heart. Thank you for being with us. I'm Tony Carnes, your host for A Journey Through NYC Religions. Bye-bye.